Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start the Zevachim daf Kuf Ches. We are going to begin on Kuf Ches Amud Aleph by the two dots, about 10 lines from the top, with the words Rabbi Yosei Guli Oimer V'chulu. So this brings us back to the Mishnah in the beginning of the parak, two dafim ago. We had a machlokus between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yosei Guli in two places. First of all, just to remind ourselves, when it comes to shchute chutz, if you did the shchita outside and also you burned, which was maleh b'chutz, the imorim, which were supposed to be done inside, but you burned them outside, so you're chayiv separately. Rabbi Yosei Guli says no. You only chayiv for ha'ala b'chutz only in a situation where the shchita was bifnim. However, if you did the shchita b'chutz, which of course is wrong, but you're not going to be chayiv for the ultimately a second time for the ha'ala. Okay, so that's one machlokas, and then we have another machlokas. Someone who is tameh that ate. I'll just read this part of the Mishnah because this is really the focus is. Hatami she'achal bein kodesh tameh bein kodesh tahar chayiv. So someone who, if you have tumas haguf, it doesn't make any difference if the item that you ate is tameh or tahar, you're going to be chayiv. Rabbi Yosei Guli says no. If you're tameh and you ate a carbon which was tahar, then you're chayiv. But someone who's tameh that ate something which was already tameh, so then you're going to be pater, because the only isser is davka if you have tumas haguf and you are tahar, and the carbon is tahar. However, in the case of you're tameh and you ate the carbon which is also tameh from before, then no, you're not going to be chayiv. So that's the machlokas. All right, so fine. So based on that, we'll understand the next two pieces of the Gemara. First of all, Rabbi Yosei Guli Omer, again, the machlokas, if the shchita was bifnim and the olah was b'chutz, whether you're chayiv on the olah. So Heishev Rebbe Tachas Rabbi Yosei Guli. So he answered in the stead of Rabbi Yosei Guli, Malo Sheichet Bifnim. If you do the shechita inside, which is the proper way of doing it, however, umal b'chutz, then you brought the imorim outside. So in that situation, shahaisel shasa kaisher. At that time, when you did the shechita properly, and therefore that carbon at that moment was had a shasa kaisher. Taimer b'sheichet chutz. Madach, when it comes to the situation of shchuti chutz on the outside, umal b'chutz shlo haisel shasa kaisher. So they're really not the same thing, right? So therefore, this is a way to be able to emphasize the kasha on Rabbi Yosei Guli, and really the point is that Rabbi Yosei Guli makes sense. There is a difference between shchita b'chutz and shchita b'fnim. So because one has a shasa kaisher. Heisher Belezer Rav Shimon Tachas Rabbi Yosei Guli, he says a shtickle different. Malo sheichet bifnim umal b'chutz shein kodesh mekabloi. So when it came to the time of the shchita, so it was mekabelit in a makom kadosh. Taimir b'sheichet b'chutz shein kodesh mekabel. So it's really the same thing, that they were both done properly in the Beis HaMikdash. So maybe now what's the difference? So Omer Ziri shchitas laila ikbenayu. Rabbi, who was the for some reason it mentions over here. So it mentions Rabbi Hishav Rabbi Omer kabol b'kli. Choil ikbenayu. So Rabbi says the difference is if you're mekabel b'kli choil. Oh, 1 second. So imi ziri shchitas laila ikbenayu. Rabbi Omer kabol b'kli choil ikbenayu. So if you do shchitas laila, so says Rashi, according to Rabbi, shacha behema b'layla b'fnim u'mal b'chutz potter shelo haiselo shasa kaisher de b'shchitas nifsala. So it's only when you did the shechita properly. If you did the shechita, even though it was b'fnim, but you did it at night, that's not a shasa kaisher. It was still in the Beis HaMikdash. She'im olo l'teiri. There's a din that if it would go on the mizbeach, even though it was done at night, there's different shitas like this, whether it's shvichas the dam or etc. Im olo l'teiri. So that's why there's a difference. Rabbi says it's if you're makabel kli choil. So In that situation, shasa kosher leika, kodesh mekabel ika, the whole psula b'kodesh mekabel. So again, it's the same thing. If there's a shasa tal and shasa kosher, there's no shasa kosher. So by night, or if it's mekabel b'kli sharis, but b'kli choil rather. Okay. Now, Tami Shachal being kodesh, as we said, the machlokas here with Rabbi Yossi Galili is when the person is tameh and he eats something which is tameh. So let's understand, before we even go into this, another nafkamina when it comes to whether it's tumas haguf or that you're eating something which is tameh. The din is when there's tumas haguf, that you yourself are tameh and you eat kodesh, which is tahar, that there's an iser kares if you would do that b'mezid. And therefore, anytime there's an iser kares b'mezid, b'shogi b'chayiv chatos. That's in the case of tameh she'oichel es a kodesh. Mash'en kain, if let's say it's achil's basar kodshim tameh, you are tahar, there's nothing wrong with you, but you ate kodshim which was tameh. So in that situation, it's an iser lav, but there is no kares. So it's an important thing to distinction to make between tumas haguf, in which is a very strong punishment if you're tameh and you eat kodesh tahar food, as opposed to you being tahar and you eat tameh kodshim. Okay, so tameh shaychim in a kodesh chol. So shaper kamilu rabbanu Rabbi Yosef Glili in our Mishnah, what they said seemingly was very strong to be able to say that you're wrong. So Amar Rabba kol heicha de nitma tumas haguf. Anytime we have a situation where the kohen was tameh first, right? We're dealing with a person who is tameh. V'achach nitma basar, when the basar was really tahar. So that we're very strict. That's a tameh sha'aychos kodesh, which is an iser kares b'mezid. So the kumul pligi dechayiv. In that situation, everyone holds shechayiv kares, right? Shechein tumas haguf b'kares. We know, as we said, that when it comes to tumas haguf, that a tameh sha'aychos kodesh, there's a din kares. No one argues with that. Ki pligi b'shenitma basar, that the basar was first tameh, v'yachach nitma haguf. So in this situation, again, the din is that if you are tameh and the basar is tameh, so then there is an isser lav. There's no kares. There's no chiv kares, and there's no chiv carbon chatos b'shoigeg. But what happens if this is the order though? First, the carbon became tameh, and then you became tameh. The Rabbanan Sabri Amrin and Migu. What is that? What's a Migu over here? Says Rashi, the isser koilel al isser acher. They hold that there is an isser over here, that right before there was a tumas basar, but now a stronger issue of tumas haguf took place, which is an isser koilel. Dahad amrinan ein isser chal isser b'asuri de alma kamrinan. So it's true that sometimes we say that we do not say isser chal isser, but in this case we do. Okay, we'll just keep it simple. Rabbi Yosef Glili Savar Lo Amrin Migu. Rashi says, L'choil Isser al Isser. We don't place an Isser on the other one. Yafihu Koilel Miu Hanimil Heicha Dishneim Shaven. Avol Hacha Teisi Tumas Haguf the Chamira. Let the Tumas Haguf come, which is more Chomer. V'teichel b'Koilel al Tumas Basar Dekila. Again, when it comes to the Basar, which is Tameh, is more Kal. Hacha Amrin Meshchitas Chuin. Rabbi Yosef Galili does not hold Isser Chal Isser. Afil Ali de Koilel. The Isser Koilel Islay Isser Chal Isser Kishu Isser Koilel. Gabi Oichel get a nasha shel oila. If you, let's say example, you eat a get a nasha of a carbon oila, the ukmina Rabbi Yosef Galili the tani chayv shtayim. Okay. Anyway, so it's totally on Isser Chal Isser. We'll get to question 3 in a second, but let's just finish this piece. So again, in the event that we're talking about the person was tameh, the kohen was tameh first, and then afterwards the boss became tameh, it's definitely a chiv kares. There's no question about that. However, let's say before the behema became tameh, And then it was Tumas Aguf, so there's Machlokes whether you say Migo in that case. Rabbi Yossi, he granted the Migo Amrina, and Tesi Tumas Aguf, the Chamira, let the Tumas Aguf, which is Chamer Kam, the Tachal Tumas Basar, so Ravashi, Mamai, the Tumas Aguf Chamura. How do you know that's even more Chamer? Dilma Tumas Basar Chamura, Shechain Ein Wat Tahira B'mikveh. So it's interesting, Vart, that an animal that's Tameh, it's Tameh, too bad, that's it. However, a person could potentially become Tahar. Okay. Question 3. Rabbi Yossi Guli Omer Shachat B'chutz V'hel B'chutz Potter. At least when it comes to your potter for the ha'ala. Shloh ha'alas el davar posel. So it should be the same thing. One who shechs b'fnim v'omal b'chutz kivan shahitzi psula. So mahi shiva tanoim lid Rabbi Yossi Guli Liman nafkim minabin hachuvos. So he said, well, first there's a shasa kaisher, right? That's one answer. If it was done bifnim, or that the kodesh, inside that kodesh is makabel, and therefore it's ima olo terid, and nafkamin is v'shech b'layel, or the kabbalah is b'kli chayil. In that situation, there is no shasa kaisher, shasa kaisher leka, abel im olo yardu in those cases. Okay. Let's maybe look at T. A28. Allah madua b'shaychid pnim v'hal b'chutz chayiv ha kishyaitzachutz nissel. Okay, so we said shani shaychid b'fnim shahaysul shasa kaisher kadim shiatza the shani shaychid b'fnim da kodesh mekablo im ol yerd af shenissel b'yaitzei. Okay, and it doesn't ask for the nafkamina. That's a little bit of a nice thing that they did on this day. So that's TA28. Let's mark that down. TA28 is the same question, basically, as question 3. Okay. TB1, we didn't get to yet. Okay. All right, let's see the next Mishnah. Let's see the next Mishnah, guys. Chaymer b'shchita miba'alya. So again, you're not allowed to do shchita outside of the designated area, which is chutz. You can't bring the sacrificial parts outside also. Now, each one of them have a different stringency over the other. So what are they? So the Mishnah elaborates. It says like this. Now, if a person would shecht outside for a common person, so the din is you're going to be chayiv. However, it says Rashi, kadshim b'chutz lachilas hedyet, for a hedyet to eat it, you're going to be chayiv. Ma'al hedyet potter. However, if you brought it out for a common person, and you burned it for that common person, then you'll be potter. Says Rashi, mishum ha'alos chutz. The chayim mishum oived abos kachavim. You may be chayiv for other problems. V'im chizid abos kachavim. V'shagig b'ha'alos chutz enu maybe al shkagasu chatos. Okay. Anyway, for whatever reason, we're going to explain why you're not going to be chayav chatos over there. Okay, but you would maybe be chayav for avodah zarah. All right, so that is apparently a kula of some sort because you don't have to bring a carbon again. But nonetheless, that's what it's referring to. Okay, chaymer ba'aliyah. However, there's more strict when you burn the imorim outside, because when it comes to fire, shnaim she'achsu b'sakin. If you have two people that are holding up the knife, like shnaim achsu b'talis, shnaim she'achsu b'sakin, v'shachtu b'turin. The Gemara is going to explain why. Apparently, you have to do the shechita yourself to be chayiv, not if two people do it. Okay. However, if let's say you have a couple people that hold onto a limb, especially if it's heavy, and they throw it onto the fire, then they're going to be chayiv. Okay, so therefore it's a chumrah. All right, well, and we'll see if everyone holds like that. Then the Mishnah says, let's say you brought it out to be burned. Chazer v'ala, chayim kol aliyah. So every single time that you bring it out, I'm going to explain what exactly is going on over here, right? But it means that you bring it out to do it, and then there's a helam echad. There's a state of forgetfulness and then another state of forgetfulness. So therefore you can be chayiv on each one. Reb Shimon. If Yosi Omer eno chayiv alachas, you're only going to be chayiv for one. Okay, you understand what that machlok is? Eno chayiv ad shielu roish mizbeach. It's necessary that when you do this outside, it has to be on a mizbeach. It has to be built for the sake of doing the ha'olah b'chutz, which again is not what you're supposed to do, but it has to be that this is a designated altar that people sin with, for example. Now, Shimon no, I feel ha'olah sel evan chayiv. Doesn't have to be a mizbech, it could be anything, a stone, rock. You'll understand based on Psukim, the machlokas there. It says the Gemara, so Maishna hamal lehedjid the potter. So why, if it was brought for the sake of a common man, that you're going to be potter? Dechsev Hashem. So b'shchita nami dechsev Hashem. So it still says the same words. Hashem, and not, in other words, not for the sake of a common person, right? You're doing like for kind of voda zara of sorts. So shani hasam yamerka ish ish. It says ish ish, and therefore the pasuk is coming to include that even if you shecht it for the sake of a common man, you're also going to be chayiv. So gabi Allah nami ksev ish ish. So it's the same words over there. So meboyle l'shnayim shalom aver chayavan. So over there ish ish by Allah is coming to tell you that even if you have two people that do it at the same time, you're going to be chayiv, as our Mishnah said. Okay, so Yahachid, that's true. Hachinami, so miboyle l'shnayim, fine. So Yahachi hachinami miboyle l'shnayim shachs b'sakim v'shachtu shachayavan. Why don't you say the same thing when it comes to the knife? Or you can say ish ish is talking about two people hold the knife. When our Mishnah says you're potter over there, no shani hasam nemerka hahu echad v'lishnayim. So it says hahu when it comes to the shechita, and therefore it's davka one person, because it says apparently in the Havamim we think it's a nichos ish hahu. Right, so it's talking about one person. So when it comes to the shechita chutz, that's only if the shechita is done by one person, not by two. Right, so yihachi gabi halanam yihaksiv hahu. So you can say the same thing over there. So maybe it's coming to only say if you only chayiv for ha'olah if one person does it, not if two. So why would you say you're chayiv by two, which is the Mishnah says? So no, for that we have a different pasuk. A different drasha. As we continue on with base, shoygeg oinis umuta. If a person falls under these categories, then you're not going to be chayiv. Says Rashi. There's a drasha in Taras Kohanim that kol hahu the gabi v'nichras kishiyishnu b'havyaso v'das daito. It has to be done with deliberation and knowledge, not an oinis, not a shoygeg. You made a mistake. Okay, so yihachi hachinami. You can say the same thing there. No, trey hahu, it's in trey. It says the word hahu twice over there. So ella la shemelamali lahoitzi seir hamishtaleyach. So when it comes to on Yom Kippur, the scapegoat, so it's supposed to be brought outside and you push it out. Now, what happens if you would do says Rashi demashma haroy lekarib l'shem chayav and alav b'chutz. There's only an isser of chutz, of shchiti chutz, is if you were supposed to do the shchita inside and doing it outside. However, sheinu oimid l'shem nenu chayav and alav chutz. So over here, that was not the purpose of it, right? Because you don't shecht it. So therefore, because of that, you would not be chayav on sir hamishtalech. Okay, let's look at. Let's hold off. Let's keep going. So chaymer miha'Allah. So why is ha'Allah chayiv? Because you're going to be chayiv even if two people bring. So Tanabanan ish matamol merabel shnaim shachsu be'aver ha'Allah shachayavin. So you're chayiv even if two people do it. Because shachlu you would think v'lodinu ma ha'shaychit lehedjit. If you shecht for the sake of a common man shechayiv, so shnaim shachsu b'sakin shachta paturin. But if two people hold a knife, your partner, so a malo lehedjit. When a person is mala for the sake of a common person shapater, because we said Lashem and different drasha, enu din sheshnaim shachsu paturin. Talmud ish ish never Rav Shimon. That's why I need Xeris Akasa to tell you that no, the pasuk says to say that even in the event that two people do it, you're still going to be chayav. Rav Yosi Omer hahu echad v'lo shnayim. So apparently it's actually a machlokas. Apparently him, he holds that you're still going to be you're going to be potter by shnayim. So you can matam on the bishish. That's just how they speak. Rav Shimon Hi hahu miboyle muti shaygin is muto. So he needs it to tell us to exclude if it was b'shaygin, etc. Not gonna be chayiv. Rav Yosi mehu hahu. Rav Shimon hu hahu darsh. Okay. So Rav Yosi medahai ish adam. So if that's true, that over there it just doesn't. There's no drasha. So then hahu ish nami tarikol adam. You have to say this by shchita and ha'olah. The el ha'sheichet lehedim nole. The chayiv. How do we know talk a person who sheks for a common person who chayiv? You can't say ish. So nafkalei medam yichashev. Ish hahu dam shafach yafil hashaychin leish. Even if you shecht it for the sake of a person, you're still going to be chayiv. Question 4. Man nilman b'nechsev ish gabi shchita va'olo b'chutz. So by shchita, it says ish is coming to include if a person who shechs for the sake of a person for a hedjit. And ha'ala is coming to include two people that throw the aver onto a pyre. They're going to be chayiv. Okay. So then the Mishnah said ha'ala v'chaz v'ha'ala. So the machlokus if you're chayiv al kol achs v'achas. Samir shlokish machlokus if you're chayiv 1 or 2 is v'dal v'hei vorim. If let's say you're burning 4 and 5 limbs. You're burning complete limbs each time. The marsev or kiksiv laso soy el shalom hu chayiv. You're only chayiv if you bring the whole thing. Ve'enu chayiv al chaser. Not if it's missing. Ve'enu chayiv al hachaser. Achol behem because akol behemaksiv because achol behemaksiv it has to be on the whole behema. So therefore, if let's say it's all broken up into parts, so you're only chayiv on one because you're not chayiv on a chaser. Umar sabra kol aver v'aver ksiv. Actually, on each limb that's intact, you're going to be chayiv. Avol aver echad diver hakol eno chayiv ela achas. If let's say each aver is like in a half, right? Half an aver and then another half an aver, so you're only going to be chayiv for one. If you bring both, right, at separate times, half and a half, you're not going to be chayiv. So if you bring a whole aver and a whole aver and a whole aver, so then, in fact, there is where the machlokus is. But if it was a half an aver, then another half, so you're only going to be chayiv one. Rabbi Yochanan, we know, machlokus be'aver echad. The machlokus, again, is if you have one aver, it's cut into different parts. Demar savar, mikteri panim shechasru. If when it comes to be makter inside properly, but it's missing, the el b'chutz chayiv, amar savar potter, that we did see before a few blot ago that there is a machlokus there. Avodal behei varim, if you keep bringing a varim one at a time, dibri hakol chayiv hakol ever be'ever. Uplig d'ula, the armor ula hakol moedim, everyone agrees makturi pnim shechasru, that if let's say you shecht and do the avoda inside, but it's missing, it's not shalim, for all b'chutz, you bring it outside shechayiv. That time you're chayiv. Well, nechlu ela bakturi chutz, they're actually makter outside shechasu ve'ela b'chutz. The marsav potter marsav chayiv. Ikadi army, some say amar ula hakol moedim b'amaturi chutz shechasu ve'ela b'chutz shehu potter. That actually, if you do everything outside, that you're going to be potter. Because when it was chaser, well, nechlu el makturi panim shechasu, that was inside proper, but it was missing, va'ol b'chutz, and then it was brought outside. The marsav chayiv. Upligdi avuda shmuel alish dekama deula di'amar avuda shmuel kaman mahadrinan poikin gam mizbech kaman delik Rabbi Yosi. So we say that you could put the limbs that fell off back onto the mizbech. We say that's not like Rabbi Yosi. Why? Says Rashi, the givon debifnim b'nei haktarininu, since it was done inside properly, the shchita v'avcha the chaser b'chutz. Even though it's true that it was brought outside, nami mechayev b'mekturi pnim shechaser v'al b'chutz. Al meksavar avu de Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, a mekturi pnim shechaser v'al b'chutz polig. That they argue in that case. Okay, let's look at question 5. Could be a little bit confusing, so let's get this down. Okay, so be'ez oifen l'kuyam o blo pligi the makra b'chatzoyin inu chayiv al kol aliyah. Okay, so it's a machlokas what that means. So it could be if it's one aver and it was be makra b'chatzoyin, so that maybe that's where the machlokas is. But if it was aver, then everyone holds you're gonna be chayiv al kol v'achas, or it could be Mekturi chutz shechasru. Let's say you were makter it outside, which is missing, ve'elu b'chutz, and you brought it outside according to the Lishna Basra, according to Ula. I'm not sure why he has to say it that way, but okay. Let's move on. It has to be on a mizbeach. So Rab Huna, my time with Rabbi Yosi, even noich mizbeach Hashem. It says it's there's a mizbeach over here. So Rab Yochanan, my time with Rabbi Shimon, yikach menoyach. When it comes to menoyach took es gediyah izim v'yasa mincha v'yal al hatzur. Right. So this pasuk in Shoftim that menoyach took this gediyah and the mincha and he put on a rock to Hashem, and that was it. And this is the opening to Shimshon's parents. Okay. It's just to be higher up, which you can understand in the days of Noach, you want everything higher up. It was a harasha that was allowed. Just for that time, it was allowed. Says Rashi, Keder kol oretz shahayim noich l'shtamish l'ol chayvus mizbeach. Okay. V'yiboy seima high time to Rav Shimon kedesanya. Rav Shimon Omer, he says based on the pasuk in Vayikra in Chumash, v'zarek hakayin es adam al mizbach Hashem, that he threw the blood on the mizbeach, and then it says Pesach ol moyed. So mizbeach Pesach ol moyed ve'ein mizbeach bebama, and there's no mizbeach when it comes to a bama. Lafikach el wasol el even chayiv. So yotzim boile. Says Rashi, kivan di omer ein mizbeach bebama. If there's no mizbeach when it comes to a bama, b'shas heter a bamos koi hilchach yotzim boile. Okay. Boy Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Chanina Karen v'kevesh v'yisoyin v'ravua, and it's fact that the mizbeach has to be squared, which we've said before. That all these things are ma'akev. Mahu shi akva babama. Is it also ma'akev not just on a mizbeach, also on a bama? So Amali Rabbi Yirmiyah Tanya Karen v'kevesh v'ravua v'yisoyin ma'akvin babama gedoyla v'in ma'akvin babakatana. So Bama Gedoyla, for example, in Noiv and Givon, these were considered to be Bamos Sibor, the Koshki and Shiloh Beis Alamim, so that is required, but not by the Bama Katana, which we've been discussing. Okay, let's look at, we're going to stop there. Let's look at question TB1. V'yikach manoach v'yalat tzor, so hech hikri b'loy mizbech. So one answer is because you're allowed. Second man de omer shehikriv v'afil al tzor v'lo tzarech mizbeach. Hikriv. So I actually only got this half right. So machlokazim zed kar. No, it's nothing to do with oil or shlomim. It has to do is the other answer is harash shahaisa. Right. So it's not really. It's not that it was allowed in normally, but it is. It was allowed only for that one time. Adka.